I choose to look in the mirror and say I like you. Choose, I choose.
Okay, welcome back. Today, we're going to switch it up a little bit. We've got Danny Gold in, a journalist. I don't even know if we can call him a journalist. I don't even really know what his title might be, but he's traveled all over the world, writes stories, investigative reporter type of thing. He's had dinner with ISIS, MS-13, drug cartels. I'm sure he's been shot at. I'm sure he's been threatened, all the things. So we're going to get him on, hear some stories, and we get some his insight in the landscape of the media now and how what his thoughts are on that. So let's get some cool stories out of him. Danny Gold, come on. Okay, welcome back. This week we have Danny Gold. Not really sure where to start because you're like a Swiss Army knife of journalism. Reporter, journalist, director, producer. You've got a podcast called The Underworld. You've been in more countries than I can count. You've been to places that I can't even say the words. I can't even pronounce them. I guess, where are you from?
I'm from the suburbs of New York, man. Like, I grew up just north of the city in a small city called White Plains, and been based out of Brooklyn for maybe 15 years now.
Were you all? I mean, did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, man. One older brother, one younger brother. I think I'm relatively close to like the black sheep of the family, I would say.
Really? Why?
Yeah. I don't know, just non-traditional path.
Sure.
Kind of taken off to go to like Iraq when my other brothers were working in like finance or politics and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, for everyone listening, they don't know. I mean, you go into some high risk areas, conflict, war, all the things and report on them essentially is how this happens.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of war stuff, some disaster stuff, like Ebola. I was there a couple times. And then now we have the podcast, which is basically just all about organized crime all over the world. And we sort of tell stories about stuff that me and my co-host Sean have reported on, but then also just stories from history that I think people would find really interesting.
So did you go to college?
I did. I didn't take advantage of it, I would say.
Well,
I was kind of in
not many people
get
do.
Stoned and watch the same movies. Yeah, get stoned and watch the same movies over and over. Didn't really know what I wanted to do and just kind of coasted. So it was kind of a regret in not taking advantage of those opportunities that were there.
It's funny, like once you get out of college, you're like, damn, I should have took this class a little more seriously. Should have took this class a little more seriously. But I guess that's what happens. You get wiser as you get older.
Yeah, man. There's a lot that you can get away with when you're in college, and a lot of programs you apply to, you can just learn whatever you want to learn and have someone smart teach it to you.
Yeah.
And I was not making classes that were at 10:30 in the morning, so it wasn't like I was taking full advantage of that.
Exactly, and you don't realize that until you're out and you're in the real world, and it's like, damn it, I had it made then.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
so
100%.
So you get out of college, and then what'd you do then?
Dude, so I wasn't like someone who had a plan. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I was going. I thought I wanted to write, but I didn't know how to get there. I didn't have, my parents weren't like people in the sort of industries that could help me out. I really had no idea what I was doing. So I got out. I started working, like your crummy sort of desk jobs. And my uncle is just this sort of free spirit, I would say, who was an engineer when he was younger, quit it, moved to Africa, did a lot of aid work there in like the 80s and 90s. Tried a bunch of businesses that didn't work out, but the one thing he did that worked out is called the Tour d'Afrique, and it's a bicycle expedition tour company, whatever, that had the longest bicycle race expedition in the world, and it goes from Cairo to Cape Town, 4 months on a bicycle, camping almost every night, starting in Egypt, going to Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, like hardcore stuff. And I was not a hardcore athlete, Jay. I don't know if you find this hard to believe. But I was not. But I was like, this is, he offered me the opportunity to go if I just kind of helped out with some of the normal, I would say, bitch work around like the campsite and whatnot. And if I kept writing like a blog for them, and I took that opportunity, and I'm glad that I did, because it kind of taught me how to travel to places and exist in places that I think I was scared of initially, you know?
So it's a bike race?
Some people race, other people, such as myself, you know,
Yeah.
take their time. So it's like, I guess you would call it an expedition / race.
Sure.
And something
So
along those lines.
you were on a bicycle
Yeah, man. Yeah.
for 4 months.
For 4 months. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie to you. I got pretty familiar. There was like a support truck that would follow us.
Sure.
I got pretty familiar with the people who drove the support truck. There were some days I was like, yeah, I'm not
Today's-
riding a bike today, man.
Today's not my day.
Yeah. Nah. I'm gonna, you know, my butt's had enough for the past like 10 days. I'm gonna hang out with these guys. You guys ride. I'll be good in the truck.
Is that still going on?
Yeah. I mean, they obviously COVID knocked him out a bit, but it's kind
Yeah.
of, he has a bunch of these races. Like there's Istanbul to Beijing. There's all these different ones, and it's kind of like, you know, stuff will pop off in countries that they do it in, where there's
I'm
like,
sure.
I don't know, a coup or like a revolution and stuff happening, and they have got to, like, my uncle has to plot, him and his team have to plot this out and make sure like their riders don't get into any trouble. Like right now, Ethiopia is crazy. Luckily, their tour is not running this year, but if it was, they'd have a lot of thinking to do right now. Hopefully that situation mellows out over the next year, but it's tough, man.
So, I mean, how'd you get into journalism after that?
Dude, so after that, I mean, I tried to write a book about it, but I had no idea what I was doing.
You tried to write a book about the bike?
Yeah, I thought the idea of like some slacker, you know, from New York,
It'd be cool.
kind of going on this. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have the discipline. I didn't know what I was doing, so it didn't work out.
How old were you then?
I was 23. But I was like, I consider myself like I was not a mature 23. I was not one of those 23-year-olds who's gonna get like a job with like an office and wearing a suit. You know, I was not on that level.
Sure.
I was a slacker for sure. You know, then I worked a bunch of like, you know, not fun jobs, you know, being in like a PA on a film set, you know, crummy office jobs. I kind of did that. I thought I wanted to travel, so I would work those crummy jobs, save up some money, go travel.
Yeah.
Then I decided I wanted to make documentaries, so I took like a 1-month film class. I bought a camera with tape. Like that's what we're talking about here. Like you put a tape in. Went abroad, tried to make a documentary. Loved it. Had a great time doing it, but I realized I had no idea what I was doing. Had no idea like how to turn it into something, how to make money off it.
Yeah.
So I used that tape that I shot.
You were just filming things.
Dude, exactly. I was just showing up and putting the camera and talking to people.
Yeah.
And it was cool. I tried to do a story on these African refugees that were in Israel, from like Sudan and Eritrea. So it was a good story. I just didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
And then after that, I just used that to apply to get into a journalism school. So I went to the City University in New York, the journalism school there, which is a great program because it's kind of like, you know, compared to other journalism schools, it's pretty much free. You know, it's like a couple grand a semester. You're based in New York. You know, it's and it was fun, and I did that for a while. Didn't really know again where I was going, but after I got out of that, I was like working at a sandwich shop. I was freelancing on the side, and I started getting gigs from a friend being a freelancer for the New York Post, which was kind of like, you know, it's like the purest form of journalism, right? I never went to an office. I get a phone call in the morning that's like, someone got murdered here, go there and knock on doors and find out what happened. There's a press conference here, go there. Something happened at this restaurant, go there and find out what happened. So basically you're just getting calls every morning from like a hard-nosed tabloid guy, like the kind of guy that they make TV shows about.
Yeah,
you know?
I was about to say this sounds like a TV show or a movie. Like, and you're the guy that they call like, hey, go out there and do this.
It was like the last grasp of like old school journalism, you know, where it's kind of like no nonsense, you know, a gruff guy with a thick New York accent telling you to get the story or else you're going to get yelled at. You know, you can picture him like, I mean, this is how I pictured him. I don't really think I ever met the guy, like chomping on a cigar, you know, just like slugging shots of whiskey in his coffee at 9 o'clock in the morning, like that sort of vibe.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of how I got my legs, you know, in terms of how to do this. Cause it was kind of like, there was no taking no for an answer, you know, and I wasn't a shy person, but I was like nervous to pick up the phone and call people.
Yeah.
But you get in on this job and it's kind of like, you got to go knock on doors of people that just had like the worst day of their lives. And you got to get them to talk. And it's kind of like, it beats any sort of shyness or hesitation out of you because you got to do it day after day after day. And in New York, it's not like you're talking to the same people. You know, you're in like a Dominican community. The next day you're in a Uzbek community. The next day you're in like a North African community. So you talk to people from all over the world every single day, and it kind of teaches you how to had to not be hesitant in approaching people in that sort of way.
Kind of like you're kind of thrown to the wolves. Was there ever a point where you're like, hey, like this isn't for me. I can't pull this. I can't pull this stuff off.
Yeah, dude. I mean, some days when you got to like knock on the door of someone who just got accused of something and you got to talk to their family.
Yeah.
That's rough. And it's like it's not fun. It's scary at times.
I'm sure.
But then also there's like, I mean, this is definitely a lot less funny. You know, I did like the Sandy Hook story when all the kids got killed at school and like we had to go knock on doors, you know, of like teachers and parents. And that is just not, it's an awful part of the job.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that, it's something that breaks people. Like people who are tough as nails, way tougher than me. Like it kind of breaks them after a while, you know? So that was definitely, there were days like that where I was like, this is not for me, man, you know, but you know, you got to keep going. You know how it is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, I mean, I'm sure some of the things that you've seen and had to do and talk to people, like you said, that have completely had their earth shattered. But, you know, you got to do your job at some point. Look, we all need to pay better attention to what we put in our body, especially if you work out like I do. I'm sure you're familiar with creatine. You know those giant tubs of junk they sell you at the vitamin shop? Well, this holiday season, the best things come in small packages, like creatine that actually works in small doses. And that's Concrete. Concrete is the only microdose creatine and is able to provide all the strength and endurance benefits of creatine without any of the negative side effects like bloating or cramps. Creatine is vital for your immune system to fight serious disease, your muscles to gain strength, and even your brain to increase and improve memory and focus. Concrete is a gift of better health, focus, fitness, and immunity this holiday season. It's a perfect stocking stuffer available at Walmart and Walmart.com. Enter to win a free Planet Fitness Gym membership plus Concrete for a year and a $500 Visa gift card. Take better control of your health, body, and mind. Get Concrete into your life today. Register now at concrete.com/podcast. That's CON-CRET.com/podcast. Available now at Walmart and Walmart.com. Concrete is truly changing the fitness and health game. Go to concrete.com/podcast. So, I mean, when did you start going abroad and like, you know, because you're Al Qaeda. I mean, you're in Syria. You're all over the place into some heavy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so while I was working for these newspapers in New York, I went from the New York Post. I was like freelancing for the Wall Street Journal, and I knew I wanted to work overseas, but I also knew no one's going to send me there, right? Like I have to do it myself. So I would save up money, and I would take these trips. And the first place I ever went was northern Iraq. And the reason I went there was because the reason I went there is because
great choice.
You know, it's it's the Kurdish area of Iraq, and Kurds are pretty welcoming to Americans. So it's a hot spot. You know, there's a lot going on there, and I thought that there was going to be a lot more going on there. Mm-hmm. But I also knew that as far as reporting in like a dangerous area or in the Middle East, it's kind of like it's almost like the beginner version of that, right? Because you don't have to be as worried for your own safety. Just because they're much more welcoming to Americans there. So, and I also had a friend that was from there that was super well connected. He lived in New York when we worked together for New York papers. So I spent like months and months doing research, saved up a bunch of money, flew out there, and just like, you know, had to figure it out. And I remember not getting a story published for a long time until I got back afterwards.
What do you think? There's all kinds of journalism. Like, what do you think drew you to this, that hard-hitting, dangerous type of journalism? Like, you know, what was it?
That's a good question, man.
You could have easily stayed in New York and did stuff in the States. Like, what drew you to be like, hey, I'm gonna travel the world and go to these tough places, these conflicts, and do it?
You know, there's like two answers to that. One is that like, you know, I wanted to be where history was being made. These were always the stories that I was interested in, that I loved to read about and learn about. I read this book, The Zanzibar Chest, when I was 23, which is about this journalist who worked for one of the wire agencies in East Africa. And he's just there on the ground when all this craziness is happening. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to learn about the stuff. This was the stuff I was interested in. My family is like very knowledgeable about the stuff, very oriented towards the stuff. Both my parents were immigrants, you know, so they kind of had this background of being kind of worldly and knowing about things. And then also the flip side of that is like, it's exciting. You know, people don't want to admit that, but like it's thrilling, and a lot of people do it. And, you know, you're supposed to be like, oh, yeah, I'm not in it for the excitement. And that's nonsense. Like people are definitely, there's a part of it that people are definitely really, really excited about. And it's kind of, it's amazing.
Oh, I mean, you're towing the line. I mean, there's definitely a rush and a thrill there of
Oh, yeah.
doing that and being like, hey, like, not sure how this is going to work out, and it might get a little dicey.
Yeah, yeah, and that that's half the fun.
How does your family feel about you being in these situations?
Oh, they're not thrilled. There's some pride there, but it was kind of like, I'm a Jewish kid from New York, so the whole like going to the Middle East thing for a while, they were like, yeah, not. And I wouldn't tell them the truth either. I would just tell them I was going to Turkey, and I didn't tell them I was going to Iraq or Syria or anything like that. So afterwards, I would tell them, and I think there's a pride there. But it's kind of like when I started reporting more on like cartel stuff or MS-13 El Salvador, my mom was like, "Oh, that's great. Keep doing that. Don't go back to the Middle East."
She'll take the cartel over the Middle East at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
So what was the first, after Northern Iraq, like what was the first dicey situation you got yourself into then?
So Northern Iraq, while I was there, I wasn't selling any stories and I couldn't figure it out. And that was when stuff was happening in Syria, right? Syria was kicking off in 2011, 2012, and the Kurds in Syria had carved out their own little region during that time. So I went with a photographer who had a lot more experience than me. We like met up online in like one of these forums for journalists, and we snuck over the border into Syria.
Why?
This is like the second or third week.
I mean,
because that was where the story was, man.
Like how hard?
That was where the story was.
How hard was it to get over the border?
I mean, at that point, it wasn't super hard. We kind of had this thing where we were trying to do it officially, right? Because there was an unofficial border there you could sneak over across, but we had to get paperwork done. So we spent a week trying to get the paperwork done, and we're like losing our minds. These guys are sending us to this city. They're sending us to that city. Everyone's telling us the other guy can sign off, and that's a large part of journalism is trying to get paperwork signed off on.
Yeah.
And we're just failing miserably. So the last day, we're like, screw it. Let's just like bring a backpack, go to the border, and see how far we can get past the checkpoints. And of course, like I pack like one pair of underwear because I'm like sure it's gonna fail.
Yeah.
And like one pair of socks. My partner had did the same thing, and we just keep getting past these checkpoints. They're just amused to see. He was Italian, Australian, I'm American. They're just amused to see us. And they're like, yeah, you know what? Go for it. See what happens.
Let these idiots go. Let's see what happens here.
Right. They just were like, we're happy we were there, and we just kept making it past checkpoint to checkpoint until we get to the last one. And these soldiers there, they were Iraqi Kurdish soldiers, are kind of just like, we're gonna hold you guys, and then we'll let you cross at night.
Oh no.
So we hang out like in their base. We're smoking their cigarettes, drinking tea. Everyone's super friendly. But then at night, they kind of drive us to this sand dune, and they're like, "Your guy, like go that way." And we have these guys on the phone that are supposed to meet us on the other side, but like we don't know exactly where they are. We're in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
So we just kind of walked over the sand dune, like not knowing what to expect. We get to the other side, and our guys are waiting there in like one of those pickup trucks with a gun mounted on the back. And then from there, it was smooth sailing. But that was like the first time where I was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun, though.
Yeah. But I mean, that kind of like popped your cherry. And then you probably thought after that, like, hey, I can make this happen.
Well, that's what you do, right? Like, I wasn't going to run. I think it's kind of foolish when young journalists run into like the diciest area right off the bat. So I wasn't going to do that. There weren't active front lines where I was going, right? There wasn't like active shooting and bombing going on. And I kind of did that. Like each trip I would get progressively more in a less safe situation just to kind of build up my confidence. Cause I mean, it's not just like, you're not just scared of things being fired at you and things exploding. You have to learn how to gauge situations, who you can trust, when to go further, when not to go further. And developing that skill set is not something that it's not like intrinsic. You're not born with it, right? You kind of learn as you go.
Sure.
So you don't want to put yourself in a dangerous situation where the wrong step can screw you over right away. You want to build up to like where you get used to what's going on slowly, and then you figure it out.
I mean, like you said, you're a white Jewish kid from New York. Like, how are you earning the trust of, Al Qaeda and like sitting down with these MS-13 guys and the cartel? Like, what's the process here? Like, how do you go about this?
I mean, the savior of all journalists is what they call a fixer, right? Which is essentially a local journalist or local guy who's super well connected. And they're the ones who really look out for your safety and connect you to certain people. And, usually they have a lot more experience on the ground, and they're going to help you get in situations where you can talk to these people. But it's up to you to not come across, to not rub them the wrong way,
sure,
to not to not piss them off, that sort of situation. So, I've just been kind of genuine with people. I think a lot of journalists might go in there and be a little patronizing and sort of maybe really serious. I kind of go with the grinning idiot thing because it's kind of like close to my personality in general. Like I'm going to go in there. I'm going to just, even if I'm uncomfortable, even if I know I'm not supposed to be there, even if I know things can go wrong, I'm going to fake it until I make it. I'm just going to smile. I'm going to make stupid jokes. I'm going to come across like maybe someone they shouldn't take too seriously. And that's always worked for me. People have their different strategies, but it's kind of just like that, Finding ways to relate to people is really, really hard too. I mean, I tell this story in something I wrote for Esquire. I was with this rebel group in Syria for a week, and the sort of, what they call the big boss man came by the house for a night. And we're sitting with them and we're asking questions and all that. And, a big thing when you're traveling is people want to ask you, are you married? Do you have kids? All that sort of stuff. And I just kind of told the story from, I pretended like it was more recent than it was, but I told the story of like a breakup and how I had like my heart broken. And this is, 10 years ago. And once I get into that, this guy who's like a tough, like he's fighting a civil war right now. He's a commander for a Syrian rebel group. His eyes just lit up. And he's just like, all the men there were just like, you could see it. They'd all been through this before. Sure. And they're all just like, their eyes are gleaming. And afterwards, like, I'm getting advice for them. They're like, look, if it was meant to be, it would have worked out. There's plenty of fish in the sea. And then after that, it was just like smooth sailing. They opened up more. They were talking more about their own families, their own lives. So it's kind of just finding those little ways that you can relate to someone no matter how different they are than you. Like always helps.
That's amazing. Finding that common ground. It's amazing you can go, halfway across the world and into a place that you never thought you'd be, and you're telling a breakup story, and rebels are giving you advice on love life. It's it's actually, it's kind of heartwarming. Yeah.
I mean, look, relationships are hard. We've all been there, man.
I know, absolutely.
Like, that's that, and that, like every man can relate to that, and you got to find those threads and like go for it and find a way. Like, I'm asking these people to open up to me. It's kind of not fair if I don't open up to them.
Sure.
And also opening up to someone, wins their trust. You're interviewing people now. You know how it is, right? Like the more you're open with someone, the more open they're going to be with you generally.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, like you said, it's a relationship business, and you're definitely in the relationship business in dangerous situations. So like if you start faking with these guys, they're probably going to catch on pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people can always sense when you're uncomfortable, and like that energy, people feed off that, So if you act comfortable, even if you're not, even if you have to fake it, people are going to be more comfortable with you. It's all about that sort of aura of just like coming across like we're just having a conversation. I'm not here to do anything that's untoward you guys. I'm not here to make anyone uncomfortable. I'm just here to like have a conversation and talk and chill. And people generally respond well to that.
Do you usually have somebody else with you from the States, or are you kind of solo and you find somebody, in Syria or a handler there somehow, how do you?
I don't like to work by myself, man. Like I want someone else there I can run stuff by. So when I was writing, I would generally try to go with a photographer. Or another writer, just so that you're not on your own. You have someone else to sound off on. And then there's always a local person usually that you're working with as well. So it's kind of like, you have a brain trust there and you guys make decisions together and try to figure stuff out. When I was doing more video, you have a crew usually. Yeah. So it would be like me, maybe 2 camera guys, maybe 1 camera guy and another producer and things like that. And you have a bigger team because I don't know, man. Like I still don't want to be caught in these situations by myself at all. Like I want someone else there who's going to help me make better decisions.
I choose to look in my mirror and say I like you. Choose, I choose.
I have a lot of friends who are pro baseball players, and they've turned me on to this amazing candy from Japan called Hi-Chew. And it's really a lot more than candy. Hi-Chew has been created in over 200 flavors since it first launched in Japan in 1975, with very specific flavor profiles. Hi-Chew's flavors are unlike anything else. There is no artificial flavor, taste at all. It's simple. Hi-Chew makes people happy, and happy people smile more. Hi-Chew isn't a gum or a taffy. However, the chewy texture is different from other candies. And the best part, Hi-Chew contains no colors from synthetic sources and is gluten-free. Single flavored sticks or variety bags are perfect for stocking stuffers this holiday season. So hand out some Christmas smiles with Hi-Chew. MLB players are not the only celebrity fans of Hi-Chew. Also, folks like John Mayer, Kylie Jenner, Macklemore, and Ryan Gosling really enjoy it, just to name a few. We want you to love Hi-Chew as much as we do. Visit hi-chew.com/win. That's hi-chew.com/WIN and enter to win an exclusive bucket full of Hi Chew candy and swag. While you're there, check out how you can become a member of Hi Chew Crew, which is an exclusive club where you receive special offers and all the cool things. Go to hi-chew.com/win. How was ISIS and Al Qaeda, like how was that sitting down and talking to those guys?
Dude, that was tough. I mean, that was a story that I did the same time I met these Al Qaeda guys. I was in this city. It was the same time I spoke to those. I was with that rebel group that I just mentioned with the commander. And it was a divided city that I was in called Ras Al Ain, and you had a couple of different groups there. The regime had been fought off, but you had a couple different groups there that were at a sort of standstill that didn't have the same goals, but were sort of coexisting for the moment. And the group that I was with had their half. There's another group that had the other half. And then there was this group called Jabhat al-Nusra, which were essentially the Al-Qaeda affiliate there. It wasn't official, but everyone knew it at the time. And they actually announced the official affiliation, I think, like a day after I left. And these guys had their little base there, you know? And the rebels I was with was like, do you want to go talk to these guys and like see what they're saying? And I was confident that the guys I was with could protect me if things jumped off. And these guys, the Al-Qaeda guys at the time weren't in a position to really be starting things.
Sure.
So we went over there, and the first guy I meet is like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" and speaks English. We went to the little base. He was from the Emirates, and he had studied for a year in Seattle. So he talked about like the Supersonics and Disney World. And they wanted to talk, the younger guys, but they were like, we don't have permission. Like, we can't talk to you guys right now. Just please leave here. So we left. And then a couple days later, we got a text message, or one of our guys got a text message that was like, that guy and one of his colleagues, I don't know what you call one of his Al Qaeda colleagues, like they want to talk to you guys, but like, they can't do it at the base. So we'll go meet at this mutual friend's house, and you guys can have a conversation. They want to tell you what they're all about.
Yeah.
So we went over, me and the photographer, we met these two guys, and I had the rebel contingency I was with to sort of make sure that we were safe. And we sat in a house with them, and they were like, this is just a talk. This isn't for journalism, all that. So I excused myself to the bathroom, turned on my tape recorder, put it in my front pocket, went back, and then we just had a conversation for an hour. And I think, there might be some people who say that ethically you're not supposed to do that, but it's kind of like, when you're in an anarchic war zone and dealing with Al-Qaeda, I might do some questionably ethic things to get a story out there. But yeah, we had an hour long conversation with them. It was easier because this guy spoke English, and it was weird, man. It was weird.
What happens if they find the recorder on you?
Oh, that's probably not going to be good.
Yeah, can't be good.
It wasn't. Look, I was very young at the time. It probably wasn't a smart thing to do looking back. And there's a bunch of decisions I've made that I'm like, that wasn't, even going to talk to these guys in the first place probably wasn't the right thing to do. But when you're like a young freelancer, you want to get a story. And I think you're willing to take more risk than you should.
What is, have you ever been like seriously like fearful, like, all right, this might go real bad, or I'm in trouble here?
Yeah. I mean, there's
because I read about you secretly recording that human trafficker.
Yeah, that was another situation. I've definitely, in my earlier days, I did this story in the Central African Republic when I was working for Vice. And it's actually on video. You can see what happened. It's the last 10 minutes of the doc. It's called War in the Central African Republic. We got pinned down. We were following some cars. We had just seen Samantha Power speak to like a press conference. We're driving back. Things are kicking off. It's like this really anarchic situation. We're following these other cars, and they turn around and they start heading back towards us. So we don't know what to do. So we just basically drive to the side of the road, abandon our cars, and run into a village. And then there's just gunfire all around us. It wasn't super close, but you don't know that when it's like echoing around you and all that. Yeah. So we got pinned down. I was with a pretty famous journalist called Robert King at the time, who had 20 years of experience covering wars. So, that was a good position to be in. But like, we got pinned down. We had to wait till nightfall, get snuck out of the village into like some church where it was kind of like a sanctuary there. And then French special forces had to come rescue us and take us back to their base. But it was cool. They gave us a bunch of their little MREs, which were actually kind of tasty. The French take care of their soldiers, man, I gotta say. So that was a scary one. It's not always like bullets flying at you, right? It's more when you're in a situation where you're not sure if you can trust the people you're with.
Sure.
Like the situation I explained then. Another situation, I had to run across a border into a city that was under under siege called Kobani, which became like a really symbolic symbol for the Kurdish groups who fought off ISIS. ISIS had that city under siege. It was actually the first time the Americans bombed in Syria, and they bombed ISIS to support the Kurdish group that was there, the YPG, and they fought back. But I had to sneak across the Turkish border, and my whole team didn't make it across. It was chaotic, so I ended up there alone. Had to team up with another random reporter, and like being in a city under siege is crazy because you're going to sleep at night and you're hearing firefights in the distance, and you don't know what's going on.
No,
like you don't know if they're getting overrun, if they're not. So it's living with that sort of tension. That to me is like the most stressful thing, where it's kind of like you don't know what the safety is. It's not things flying by you. It's that, like, not knowing what the situation is. That's the scariest thing for me.
Yeah.
And Ebola was scary too.
Yeah, I was going to ask next about that. Because I mean that almost scares me worse than the gunfire and all that stuff. That's a whole different animal.
Yeah, dude. It's
what year was that?
2014. That was like the September 2014. That was another one for Vice. I went back actually in 2015 to do one for their HBO show. But that was like the height of the Ebola outbreak in Liberia, and it's actually it's like a.
And why did you go? Is the question.
I volunteered.
He's like, I'll go.
Yeah, they were like, it was in my newsroom, and they're like, who's willing to go cover Ebola? And I wasn't really thinking, like, I do things and then I think about them afterwards.
Sure.
And it was that. But, you know, it ended up being a really good story, and it got me a lot of good attention. But it was, Ebola is actually hard to catch, but you're not thinking about that when you've been around people with it, and then you're lying in your hotel room at night and your stomach starts to hurt a little bit, which is like going to happen when you're eating food in a developing nation in general. But that's how Ebola starts usually. So that's terrifying. That's really, really, and you're like, did I get too close? Did I do this? But it's actually, to get Ebola, it involves like mucous membranes and fluids and all that. So if you're just near someone and they're breathing, you're not going to catch it, right?
Got it.
But you're not thinking about it rationally.
Hell no.
When you get that like stomach ache at 2:00 in the morning, you're like, I'm the guy. Like I'm the guy that's going to get airlifted out of here. Or I had to come back. I came back to New York and I was like quarantining myself in my apartment for a couple of weeks. And, you start to feel a little sick and you're like, I'm the guy. Like there's going to be a front page New York Post story about how this idiot doofus from Brooklyn went to Liberia and brought back Ebola and put everyone else at risk. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy, Jay.
I hear you. I don't want you to be that guy either. Are you RSVPing yes this holiday? Express has you covered with outfits for every single invite. Express is that perfect mix of confidence-boosting styles and comfort for every occasion this holiday season. Check out their suits available in plaid, flannel, luxe comfort fabrics, and more. Perfect for everything from swanky holiday parties to festive weddings. Or maybe you need a winter jacket. Express has a killer line of flannel jackets, sharp blazers, handsome bombers, and more. And those flannel jackets are so warm and the perfect layer for all my holiday fits. And of course, you can match any style with jeans, dress pants, or chinos. The Express Flex X jeans are the most flexible denim yet, with a comfort stretch waist. So what are you waiting for? RSVP yes this holiday. Unwrap festive new styles, holiday deals, and more at express.com or in stores. Would you ever go, I mean, you're older now, like, would you go back in? I mean, let's say some other virus-born thing popped up. Like, would you willingly go back into a third world country and cover it?
I mean, it depends on how easy it was to catch. One of the things I did before Ebola was I called a couple of guys. There's this photographer, John Moore, who's like an amazing photographer. My friend Ben Solomon. They were these reporters that had been there for a couple of weeks beforehand. So I called them. That's something I always do. And people are generous with their time and with their advice. Called them and it was like, what's the deal? What am I getting myself into? And the way they explained it was sort of just like, just be careful. Like it's not as extreme as you think it is. You just got to watch yourself and not do anything too stupid, and you'll be okay. So if if something like that popped off, I wouldn't be the first one there. Yeah. But I'd call the first guy, and if he was like, "It's all right, you'll survive," then I'm jumping in.
Come in.
If the money's right.
Yeah, well, that makes senes. I've read about it. I think you've talked about it. I mean, being in all these places and PTSD. Have you suffered any of that? I'm sure there's you have colleagues that have been in some serious conflicts and have some of that.
Yeah, it's definitely a big thing in the conflict journalism community, especially with freelancers who don't get the support that staff people do. Like if you work for the New York Times, they're going to give you a therapist if you need it. With freelancers, we don't have that support base, so it's kind of like you don't really get a handle on these things quickly, and it's not. It almost feels funny talking about it as a journalist because we're around so many people that live in these countries where it's like their day-to-day life every single day.
That's what
right?
I was going to ask that too. Like, how you've been all over the world, like, and I think in America, like, we're on this huge mental health kick. I mean, which is good. I'm not against it by any means, but like, how are these people over in these war-torn countries do they even think about it, or that's just the norm?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm with you on that, right? Like, I think it's good that there's a lot more mental health awareness that there is now.
Yeah.
But like trauma and PTSD are real things. And I've been in a shitty job. I've had a boss that was like crummy to me. Your boss being crummy to you, it sucks. It's not PTSD.
No.
And it's not trauma.
No,
right?
not at all.
That's a different ballgame. So yeah, like, I mean, that's one of the things I worry about. And I think that's why you see these cycles of violence, right? It is people who grow up growing up in Iraq when you're a kid and you're around these things, it warps you. It does something to you. And I can tell you that because I've gone to these places for a week or two at a time. And I know, like, I go to Syria for a week or two. I know I'm going back to New York.
Yeah.
I know my family's safe. I know my friends are safe. I know my apartment is safe. I know I'm going to get there. And within 2 days, I'm going to get my favorite meal, my favorite restaurant. And I'm going to have a couple of drinks with my friends and I'm going to feel great. Imagine that's your life for years and years and years. And your family's not safe. Your friends are not safe. Your home is like it warps people, and it's really tragic. And there's not, you can have Doctors Without Borders. You can send a surgeon somewhere, and they can do the surgery or they can help people out. And obviously, there's a lot of people that aren't getting helped out like that. But there's no like Psychologists Without Borders, right?
No.
It's really there's a language thing. These are not things that you can deal with in like 1-2 hour session. This is a pronounced thing. So I'd love to see a huge focus placed on mental health in war zones or with refugees. I think it's really like one of the greatest challenges. And if you don't treat these things, it's gonna come back around.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, and you get a completely different perspective, like than 99.9% of Americans do. You're there, you're in it, and you know that end of the day, you're coming back to New York, like you said, like you're gonna have your favorite meal. And I don't want to take anything away from mental health at all, but like, we don't have the same, not even close to the same problems that some of these countries have. So I'm not really sure what I'm saying, but like, I just appreciate your perspective on it.
No, I get it for sure. But I also think about like paramedics, emergency room doctors, people who do like harm reduction for drug addicts. Like, that
it's
stuff.
Tough.
I mean, it takes a lot out of you, and these people are dealing with this, day in, day out. So I have a lot of sympathy for people, EMTs, nurses, people who deal with these sort of tragedies day after day after day for a living.
Yeah, like you said, it wears the hell out of you. So I mean, you've been in the journalism world for a long time. Like, what's your take on the state of the media like today? 'Cause it's tough. I mean, I want to hear you.
So I have a couple of viewpoints on that. Like, I think it's people blame the media for a lot of things, right? And usually it's just like a guy on cable news who said something that was like, shouldn't have said, or something really stupid. And they're going to take that screen grab, and that's going to be the media. The media is huge, right? I know so many reporters who are, people like to get mad at the New York Times for things, but the New York Times reporters I know are the guys who are overseas busting their ass every single day. The ones whose stories like I read to prepare me to go over and do this sort of stuff. So I think, it's twofold, right? I am disappointed in some media coverage a lot now too. I think there's like way too much focus on the culture war and all that sort of nonsense. I think you see stuff that people are getting wrong a lot. And I also see like, I don't think this is a right left thing either, right? Like, I'm disappointed in facets of the left media. I'm disappointed in facets of the right media.
Sure.
And I think it's a hard line to walk right now. But also, like, the industry is changing in a way that has put the kind of reporting that I do, or the kind of reporting, even if it's just like going to community board meetings for your local newspaper. Local newspapers are dying, and they are the bread and butter of journalism, is local newspapers. And it's reporters who make very little money, who go out there to school board meetings, to press conferences for mayors, for small towns and stuff like that. They're dying off. They're not making any money. There's so much focus on all these people, you see Substack, Patreon, all these people who are getting a lot of money, but they're not even reporting, most of them. Yeah. They're just talking about other journalists doing other reporting or commenting. They're pundits.
Yes.
Where it's like nitty gritty reporting on the ground is a dying art form, and there's not that much money in it. I don't really do a lot of overseas trips these days. That's why I started the podcast, because it's kind of like the kind of reporting that I want to do, it's
pay.
not sustainable. Yeah, you can't earn, I want to buy a house eventually.
Yeah.
And you can't do that getting paid like very little money to run around the world in dangerous situations. So it's tough. I don't have an answer. I don't know what to do. I would say if you can, support your local journalist. Don't watch that much cable news. Look for people doing on the ground reporting. If they have patrons or whatever else, like do what you can to support them, because that's the real stuff. And even something like magazines are dying out. How many magazines did there used to be 10 years ago? That's the kind of reporting I love. That long form, in-depth, hard-hitting reporting. And there's not that many places to do it right now.
There isn't, and that's what I was going to ask you. It seems like there's this war on media, and platforms are constantly changing. It sounds like that, and you're doing the podcast, and it just, like you said, it just sucks for people that really want to do real news, hard hitting stuff that could help change some things. Like, everyone's just constantly flipping between Fox News and CNN and just listening to each side tell the other side that they're no good.
Right. I mean, it's all punditry right now, right? Or people talking about punditry, whatever else, when it's kind of just like, just do the stories and let people make their own decisions. But it's not easy. I mean, that is the reason that me and my colleague, it was last summer during the pandemic, we were just like, first of all, it shut traveling down. And then also the rates in journalism are super low. They haven't changed. It's one thing to earn this much money when you're 27. It's another when you're 38. And we were like, we need to figure something else out. So we launched this podcast about organized crime to sort of talk about the stories that we enjoyed. And some of it's our own reporting that we've done. Some of it's just storytelling from research that we've done. And hopefully it works out, because I'd love to get back out there and start, doing that nitty gritty stuff. But for right now, I think we're sticking with the podcast, and hopefully as that goes up, we can get out there and do some cool stories. Like, one cool thing about it is that I'm getting messages now from people in law enforcement and people that law enforcement are chasing, being like, we love what you guys are doing. Come hang out with us. We'll show you like what's really going on. So I've got like, feds and cops being like, come see this. Come, we'll show you what's at. And then I have like legitimate criminals who are kind of like, we'll take you and we'll show you some stuff, man. And if you're getting that, we're doing something right,
Oh, absolutely. If both sides are coming at you, you're well sought off. What do you think of Afghanistan with the withdrawal? Because you've been over in that area, and you're well versed. So where do you stand on it?
Look, I'm not super well versed in Afghanistan. I've never worked there. I have a lot of friends who did. I think it was very messy. Yeah, I have a lot of friends that were involved in evacuation stuff and trying to get their people out. Yeah. It's hard, man. There's definitely a part of me that thinks like getting out is the right thing to do. There's definitely a part of me that thinks that it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that I don't have to make those decisions or make those calls. I think it was definitely messy, and they definitely could have done a much better job than what they did. We left a lot of people that were our allies there in a really tough situation. And that's something that I think we saw, we've seen constantly over the past 10, 20 years, is like these people who, our allies overseas, who risk everything to help us in these situations, and we, they're like, we had our last, presidential administration wanted to pull out of northeast Syria, where the Kurds have been our like staunchest allies in the Middle East. And like, if you leave them, you're leaving them to the wolves. Yeah. So it's not even a Democrat Republican thing. We just keep seeing both sides. Yeah. Both sides leaving our allies like in the lurch. And also too, like, we should be letting in way more refugees that have helped us out, that, they're not safe to start with. And then you work for America in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria. There's a target on your back. Yeah. And we should be getting those people. I don't know. Because of the work that I've done, and like I said, what I've seen happen to people and all that. And I have friends that are refugees. Like, that's one thing that I feel really strongly about is letting more refugees into this country. And also, those are the people that are the most pro-American you'll ever find. Like, I have a buddy who was a.
Go ahead.
I have a buddy who's a translator, an Iraqi translator, and he got in, and he lives in California now, and he has a motorcycle with an American flag on it. He loves this country more than anything, and I think that's a constant thing that you see, that refugees that come here are like pretty, like they're the ones who really believe in the American dream still. They're willing to get here and work a crummy job to build up and keep going. And they're really appreciative. So I think people need to keep that in consideration when they talk about refugee issues.
I think that's a great point. And listen, if you're willing to work for the U.S. and in your home country and risk your life, by all means, come on over. And because I mean, they'll do it like you said, like they love America. They want to work. They want to add value. Let's do this.
Yeah, man.
So I also saw a couple more for you, and then I'll get you out of here.
Yeah, of course.
Your grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and was hid. Tell me your story.
Yeah, sorry, dude, the delay. Sorry.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, you want to do it again, and I won't cut you off. Sorry about that.
No
man.
problem. So your grandfather, you found out, or you probably knew, was a survivor of the Holocaust, and was, I guess, hid in a basement or somewhere. Is that correct?
Yeah. All four of my grandparents are Holocaust survivors. My grandfather had a situation where, I think the term they call it is a righteous Gentile, someone who's a non-Jew who hid Jews during the Holocaust. And my father's side Slovakian, so he's a Slovakian guy. And this guy who was not Jewish, who kind of got put in contact with him, didn't know him at all, hid him in his barn and then in his basement. And this is a situation where it's not just if they find him, they're going to kill this guy, they're going to kill him and his immediate family as well. So I actually went back there a couple of years ago. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with it.
How'd you find the guy? How'd you find him?
Well, my family has a relationship with them. Like, they've stayed in contact.
Oh, wow.
For decades. So when my father grew up in Slovakia, and all his grandparents were killed in the camps and all that. Like, they didn't have a lot of relatives, but this guy and his family, they were treated like relatives. So they would visit them, and my father would call. This guy's 80. Well, he passed away. He was 89. He was like 15. His parents were older. So my father would call his parents his grandparents. Like, they were very grateful. They're still in contact. My uncle, who has that bike race, he employs one of the grandchildren for his company. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, they knew this guy, and I had met him when I was younger, but I didn't really think to ask the questions that I should be asking.
Sure.
So I went back a couple years ago to interview him, and I think I'm working on a story right now for Tablet, and then I have the video, which I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I'm just fascinated because I've seen this in other stories I've done too, about people who, in these times of like ethnic conflict of war, are willing to risk their lives for strangers, to save their. And I mean, like, you do that, you're set for life. You're on the right side. You can do a lot of bad things after that. Like,
Absolutely.
you're good to go.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to him about like his reasoning and why he did it. On the flip side, I'm also fascinated by people who, grow up next to somebody and they have dinner together once a month, and then they turn on them when these like sort of situations kick off, whether it's like the former Yugoslavia or Rwanda and stuff like that. So that extreme humanity relationship where it's like the worst of the worst and the best of the best, like, that fascinates me. So I wanted to go there and talk to him about like why he did it and that sort of thing.
That's what I was about to say. Like, you've been in some amazing places, and you've seen the best of humanity and probably some of the worst of humanity. And it's fascinating. I mean, it's interesting. That counterbalance and how quickly it can change, and how how close you can be to somebody, and it can go really bad or really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you just said. Like, you see the best people on earth, and you see the worst. You see people who like risk everything. Like, could I do that? Would I hide somebody if they were going after someone that I didn't know? Risk myself and my family? I don't know. I mean, the kind of person that does that is like, what is going on inside their head? How do you make someone like that? And but like you said, you also see the worst of the worst. So it's kind of like, sometimes you want to focus more on the positive in that situation than the negative, because it'll eat you up.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question. Like, how does somebody make that decision? You could go down a rabbit hole of the worst humanity. They're raised a certain way, whatever their environment. But like the people that do the good side of it, I don't know if they're intrinsically that way, or if they're just good people, or if they're just raised a certain way. It's interesting questions.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, everybody wants to find this like deep-seated explanation for it, and like, what was the background, how were they raised, and all that. And you go there and you talk to him, and he's just like, no, we did it just because we did it. We did it because it was the right thing.
Right thing to do.
And and it's kind of like this unexplainable thing in human nature. Like, you can look for answers and for a formula, but there is none. You're not gonna pinpoint it. There's no like academic talk or academic speak you could really use to analyze it. Like, there's no why, that's just what they did. They did it because it was the right thing to do. And that's kind of where I leave off in the piece I'm writing. It's just like, I can't explain this to you. There's no why for this. It just is. They just did it because it was the right thing to do. And that's how they felt.
Well, hopefully the world and humanity can start doing the right thing more often, and we'll hopefully be in a better place. We'll see, though.
Yeah, man.
Well, you got anything else going on you want to talk about?
I don't know. If you want to fund some Netflix shows, get at me. But no, just the podcast. We just put up an episode about what's going on in Haiti. We have an episode next week about the Guinea-Bissau and how it became a narco state. We do these historical stories. I had one about Chinatown gangs in New York in the 70s, which is fun.
That's
so we
cool.
try to do a nice mix of cool organized crime stuff that's happening now and, old school stuff, stories from people from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But the Underworld Podcast, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. Underworldpod.com is our website and all that. And that's all I got.
I love it. All right. Danny Gold, Underworld Podcast, organized crime around the world. Interesting stuff. He's a great storyteller, puts himself in some compromising situations from time to time, but he's out there fighting the good fight, and I appreciate it, man. It was fun.
Dude, thanks so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Reach out if I can ever help.
Awesome.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, that's it. Danny Gold. Fun stuff, interesting as hell. And I asked him, I can't, what he was thinking, just running into some of these places and getting a story. But, he obviously loved it and got some cool stuff. And you can check out all of his stories on all the pages that he mentioned. But we're going to keep going. That was fun. That was interesting. That was different. We're trying to mix it up and bring different people on the show and give you some interesting stuff to listen and watch. So hope you like that one. And hit me up, Instagram, Twitter. Let me know who we should have next. That's a wrap. Thanks.